I know Suns is Suns will probably be second. So it'd be SB Suns and HTA one.
Okay, okay. So
And then also
essentially, but you're saying it's the number one alliance at the moment that is, or the strongest alliance at the moment that is doing the recruitment as far as going and reaching out to other top players, even if they're in other alliances, to try and bring them into the number one alliance.
yeah,
Okay. Mm. The short
which
version.
I mean, which I tell them I was like, listen, as long as you're not doing it to your allies, it's fine. Don't get me wrong. People recruit strong players.
Mm,
There's nothing wrong with that. But when you start trying to pull them out your allies, people that you plan to work with, that's kind of fucked up because you're just crippling them more.
yeah, yeah. So like the biggest challenge is that this is pretty standard practice as far as when you get into new kingdoms. This is one of the highest percentage chances of things that you'll see, really just done by default. And most of the time, it's not really done with any ill intent. It's more of we're in a new kingdom, everyone's recruiting, and everyone's trying to bring in activity and or power or both, and or they're trying to supplement their inactivity, right? Or they're low activity players or maybe players that have gone inactive. So because of that, you're going to fall into this kind of pyramid funneling effect of where if because everyone's consistently recruiting, because everyone wants to be as strong as possible, everybody wants to have the most amount of active alliances, or sorry, the most active alliance, I should say. They want to have the strongest alliance. It's not. We have to think about it think about it in the opposite stance, right? Are there any alliances that are trying not to be the strongest? Are there any alliances that are trying not to recruit anyone, right? And so when you think of it like that, it doesn't make sense, right, for people to do that. It makes more sense for them to do the former, which is to go out and recruit and to try and bring in as many active players and as much power as possible. The challenge is where it starts to get iffy, is that, when you're recruiting from players that are in other alliances, that are either, like other strong alliances. Like, it's different if you're reaching out to an alliance that let's say is, with your server size, let's say they're like 1,000,000 power, right? Or they're 750,000 power. And you're recruiting from people in those alliances because they're a little bit lower powered. They're kind of maybe farther down on the board a bit, right? They're kind of off the top attention leaderboard, or the top of the leaderboard, right, that has the most attention. So because of that, you probably don't notice it as much, right? Compared to if they're trying to recruit from like the number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5 alliances. That's a lot more noticeable, and that usually can cause more waves. But this is, again, normal. I'm not saying that I agree with it, but it is normal practice in pretty much every new kingdom that will ever arise. And if you're asking how do you combat that, how do you deal with that, how do you solve this? Well, to be fair, there's really only two ways, maybe three, but two ways that I could think of initially. One is that you, from the beginning of a new kingdom, within maybe the first week or so, you would reach out to all the leaders, maybe even officers, but at least the leads, and you would say, hey, if no one came in with more than one alliance, right, like there's no groups or new kingdom projects or jumpers, then you say, okay, hey, look, let's all get together, and you would still do this regardless, but it's just the way that the way you would approach it may be different if there is a group that's coming in with two or more alliances versus all the alliances being individual, right? They're all independent of one another. And so then from that point, you would say, okay, hey, let's all get together. Let's all try and get in the same Discord. Let's all try and maybe get on a voice call. And let's talk about, what everyone's expectations are, right? What does everyone want out of the kingdom? Because you have to start from somewhere, right? And usually the best way to start is you need to get to know people. You need to get to know, what are their plans for their alliance? What are their plans as individual leaders? Do they have Kingdom Builder experience or do they not? Like, do they know that there's a KVK coming up next season? Do they know they're going to be able to fight to their heart's content next season? Or do they not care about that? Or do they not know that KVK is there and they just think that season 1 is the end-all be-all, so we're just going to fight here as much as we can? You really have to kind of piece people apart and figure out everything they know and what their overall understanding is of the game. Once you can do that, and obviously you have to ask the right questions, but once you can do that, then you can actually have a little bit better of a starting point as far as, okay,
Yeah.
now you can sell things like you were saying earlier, right? About pitching them this idea of, okay, yeah, maybe maybe it would be good to have multiple active and healthy alliances, right? Maybe it is a good idea to try and balance out alliances to a degree. Right, maybe it's good to not have a free-for-all kill event that's across the entire kingdom, right? Where for that day or two, just anyone and everyone is going to be subjected to being attacked. Like, these are the types of conversations that you would need to have with the top and active leads. Now, let's say you vie for option one, and you're able to get good responses from the majority of the top alliances, and everyone is like, okay, yeah, let's all get on the same page, let's all agree to these things. Awesome. You're in a great place, at least at that step. The other side of it is that they don't agree, and everyone, or you're not able to come to an agreement, let's say, and then everyone just kind of ends up doing their own thing. Usually, when that happens, you typically have smaller groups that will form, right? And it could be like 2-3 alliances here, or 2 alliances here, 2 alliances there, and it's kind of more like allies, right? Like independent allied groups. And that's usually what happens if like the majority is not able to come together. It then falls to kind of more small groups, and then whoever's the biggest small group will kind of take the reins, right? Most of the time they'll kind of dictate or go off of, oh, this is like they'll be the ones to impact, right? Have the majority influence. And then the second option is if you are unable to, because you have to keep in mind that's a lot of work, right? If you're going into a new kingdom and you went in just by yourself or by yourself with a couple people or even just one alliance's worth, it's a lot of work to have to go in and reach out to these other individuals. I mean, think of it like speed dating. That's basically what you're doing, right? You're showing up and you're getting to know all these people for the first time. And that's exactly what it's like when you're going into a new kingdom without a group. You're essentially needing to speed date, right? You need to figure everyone out, right, as fast as you can. And so then you get to the second option, which the second option, and this is usually the option I go for, is that you would want to actually put together a project, whether you want to call it a new kingdom start or a jumper project, right, whatever it may be. You put that together, and then you try to go into that kingdom with as many alliances. Ooh. Okay, even though I muted that on there. All right, triple record. Excuse me, I had to get that out. But you go into the kingdom with, right, as many alliances as you can, or at least a few, right? You could say 2, 3, 4, maybe at bare minimum, but hopefully, right, as many as you can. And then you go into that new kingdom with a group of alliances or a team of alliances, and that allows for you to then, in short, have a greater influence, right? You have a larger presence in the kingdom. So you can do things like what you're talking about, right? And you can be more at the forefront of those conversations. Because, in short, and this is like a very easy, simplified way of putting this, right? Sometimes it comes down to who has the biggest stick. And then it's about how do you use that stick. Doesn't mean you have to use the stick poorly or badly or negatively. You can use the stick in a good way. But sometimes it's about establishing, first and foremost, who has the biggest stick. And the challenge that you're running into is basically what the majority of people run into, that really believe in doing things certain ways or knowing that there's a better way to like work with everyone in the kingdom, right? Rather than not. And so in my experience, those are pretty much the 2 to 3 ways that you're going to get the most out of wanting to see something in a kingdom play out the way that you're envisioning it, right? Or a way that you believe in it. Because otherwise, you're just going to be, in the kingdom lobbying and trying to get trying to kind of like sell your, right? You're basically going to be a salesman for however long it may or may not take to get enough people on your side to basically advocate or say, yeah, we're now going to do things differently. And it's just that isn't a high percentage way of playing it, that's a low percentage way of doing it, because you have to first be able to sell that idea, and then people have to be on board with it, and then you have to have enough people that are on board with it that are in positions that have leverage, like leadership positions, and then to a lesser degree officers, and then top players as well, right? To be able to buy into what you want to accomplish or what you would like to see done, because maybe they also want to see that done. If that makes sense. And again, that's kind of the short, middle-ish, winded way of saying it, but that pretty much covers in kind of a macro view on how you would get to where you want to get to, Goblin, based on what you're saying, if that makes sense. Goblin's like, man, I fell asleep like 15 minutes ago. It's okay. It happens.
I just feel like it's partial game design, the way everyone just caters towards the higher powered alliances and recruiting. It's just how the game is designed
It is.
to work.
Without a doubt. I mean, if they didn't have, if they didn't have leaderboard systems, then, well, I mean, even if they didn't have leaderboard systems, you probably still would have it to a degree, but the leaderboard systems just allow for a visualization of, the Darwinism effect, right? The survival of the fittest. So
It's also just the fact that everyone wants to win. It's a
I heard what you
competitive
said.
game.
I was listening to what you were saying. I was just at work. Okay.
oh, got you. No, you're
I'll-
good, Goblin. You're good. But yeah, I hope that helps, Goblin, right? For as far as what you can do in your situation. But yeah, Sifter, for what you were saying, I think it's absolutely right. If you look at traditional kingdom builders and the way that they play out, it very much is that way, right? And basically every kingdom is always, by default, going to fall victim to the kind of mega alliance effect, right? Because not everyone, but you're always going to have a number of people that want to climb the ladder, right? They want to work their way up and get into a stronger alliance, strongest alliance they can get to. This is usually the case with spenders, and then to a somewhat smaller degree for those that are like free to play, low spend, and probably just more so free to play in general, just to kind of separate the groups. But that's usually what happens, and because you're always going to have a number of people that are always trying to climb the ladder, you're left to a pyramid effect where you're funneling, and it's only getting smaller and smaller and smaller to the top, right? Because no one's preaching from the mountaintops and saying things like, "Oh yeah, guys, we need to have 6, 7, 8 balanced alliances, or 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 balanced alliances that are all really close in power." Like, you rarely ever see that. I mean, that's like an anomaly, in almost all new kingdoms, and so because of that, it is spot on. That's just the way it plays out. It's the way that the game itself is designed. Now, it doesn't mean that that's how we have to play. It just means that is the easiest course of action because it's kind of lined up, right? It's like having guardrails on a bowling lane, right, or having tricycles on your bike.
It's also, you cannot experience the whole game if you play like that.
Yeah.
Just because of the fact that it's competitive for the dragon, you want the elite borders, and it's almost impossible to share it just because of the restrictions between the zones.
Yeah.
You can't fit people where they want to go, and it just becomes an endless loop of trying to satisfy everyone, and it becomes too much if you can't even get paid to do it. For example.
You're right. I mean, we're all volunteers at the end of it.
Yeah.
But you bring up a really good point, and I love that you touched on that because, like if you really strip away the game and you look at the fact that, like, you get into a new kingdom, you're always going to have people that spend. It's more likely that the people that spend are going to try and get into the number one alliance or the strongest alliance. Then you're going to have people that are just trying to apply and get into the stronger alliance or climbing the ladder and working their way up. So this kind of the system in Kingdom Builders already passively funnels into this pyramid structure where you have the top players trying to get into the strongest alliance, right? And for a number of reasons. But because of that, it hyper-focuses through this hyper-funneling that says, okay, we want to have the strongest alliance possible, and then once you get into once you get to your end of season, like you said, right, doing the elite behemoths, because you can only have a limited amount of people that can get those frames right for participation. It limits it even more, right? So you basically have this that turns into this, and then you get into KVK and you do rewards, and it's turning into this, right? And it's like your pie just kind of keeps getting smaller to an extent, right? Because you obviously can share certain Behemoth Elite rewards, right? If you have a different number of participants that got them the first time, get them the second time in a season, or in a new season, I should say, and then so you can do a little bit of sharing, but for the most part, a lot of the mechanics and systems that you pointed out, and then others, basically focus on establishing a small pie, and then it just gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and that's kind of how it works season to season, unfortunately. And you're right, it's not a sustainable model at all by any means that's going to allow the highest amount of people to be playing the game actively, along with being able to develop or engage the highest amount of, enjoyment, right? Or engagement overall, you could say, while reducing the amount of player drop-off or attrition that's happening in the game.
Yeah, and also like this season we wanted to share our Behemoth's borders, and we had two full alliances that we wanted to ally with, or that we were leading, and we wanted to do the elite Behemoths and give the elite borders to our members who hadn't had it before.
Okay.
But they power scale the game so much that it's impossible to give it to the deserving people. You need the most powerful players to be there on time to compete with other alliances. And you cannot do the damage, you cannot do anything. If you want the rewards, you need to power scale it to the maximum and put all your top players in there. And they already have the rewards, so it becomes a null point.
Yeah. No, no, you're right. And again, part of that, I think a big part of that is because of the way that they've scaled the behemoths, and then they basically said, okay, we're going to scale the behemoths first, and then we'll adjust the legion capacity second. And it's just opposite. What they should have done is scaled the behemoths based on or I shouldn't say based on wholly, but factored in and based it on part of what the legion capacity is for that particular season. That way, it would have scaled more appropriately, even just from that one facet alone, compared to how they're doing it now, which is just, like you said, it's further alienating, it's isolating out essentially anyone that is not the cream of the crop, right? The top strongest players in the group. Or you can even say those that are, like max T4, T5 unlocked, or even getting closer to mid-maxed or full max T5. But that threshold it has been going higher and higher and higher every season thus far. That's been the precedent, and it does suck, because it is one of those things. I don't know if they even realize it just yet on how damaging and what the long-term negative impacts are going to be, and some of those we're already seeing now.
Yeah. I have a perfect example of this. I had a player last season. He pushed 10 million power to help us with behemoths, but he could never get into the behemoth raids anyways, because he was just too weak. His march sizes weren't good enough, his heroes weren't good enough, but he pushed power to try to get into them, but the behemoths just scaled too much for him to be able to compete.
Okay. Oh, so he tried. You're saying he tried, but then he found out that maybe his average damage output wasn't as much as someone else.
No, we had to tell him, because
Okay.
we tracked the damage that you deal on every behemoth, and to see who in the future we will and let them to the pit.
Okay.
Just because it's so competitive. But I really wanted to give this guy the enjoyment of playing these behemoths, but it takes too much time to fail every time, and realizing that we can't have people who can't deal enough damage.
Yeah.
And that's how we lose players. He quit this season. Couldn't train behemoths.
Yeah.
And that's all he cared about.
Yeah. And you bring up once again another great point, which comes down to the game itself kind of limiting the experience that a player can have and can enjoy throughout an entire season. If you're not allowing for everyone to participate in everything, it does. Now, we're not saying you have to be the best. We're not saying you have to be the strongest. We're not saying you have to do the most damage. But when you exclude that opportunity, that's where it starts to become negatively impacting, just like you described. And I talked about this before as like a suggestion that I had, which was the way to me that the game should be designed is that as a free to play, you should be able, like throughout the course of a season, you should be able to kill the flame dragon. Because otherwise, what are we talking about? Like, how does that make any sense that you're going to allow? I mean, the majority of people that play any Kingdom Builder are free to plays. But let's be real. Once you get to what, like the Thunder Rock, right? Give or take, either like the Thunder or like the or the Necro. At that point, you know, it's really going to be, you need like people that are spending, because you just need stronger tier troops, you need stronger artifacts, you need stronger heroes, and those are typically things that spenders are going to have earlier access to. And it doesn't make sense to me logically that you build this season out, but yet you alienate arguably 80 to 90%, or 80 to 85% if you want to be a little bit more conservative, of the total players that are playing, to where if you had, because you have to look at it like this, what if no one spent? Right? Would a pure free-to-play alliance be able to do all the behemoths? No, of course not. But what I'm saying is, like, that should be the case. And then you allow for the elites to be done by people who are stronger. That way you get the best of both worlds. Free-to-play get to enjoy, and they get to do all the behemoths, but then you do elites, and you can even add more tiers if you want to. Bam. Problem solved.
And that's what I don't get. Why the fuck do they scale the normal ones and not just... The elites are there for a reason.
Exactly.
They give you buffs.
They're called elites.
Yeah, they become better because you're good at the game. Or right now it's because you have a lot of damage.
Yeah.
It's like elites should be skill based, and it should be because you know how to do it. You practiced it, and it should be hard. The normal ones, they've just become a chore for no reason.
Yeah.
Like this season, or for a few of the older servers, they could only 2 alliances could go into Zone 4.
Mm-hmm.
Half the map couldn't enter.
Yeah.
Like the only reason, like this season would have been so boring if only, like in our server there was only one family that could enter the zone, because the other players just didn't care about Behemoth at all.
Yeah.
The other 9 billion power alliance didn't care about it at all. Had just given up because it was too hard for them. And then you had the like the T4 alliances, or low power free to play non-spender alliances, couldn't even compete. They couldn't. They did 1 million damage to a 5 million damage normal Behemoth, and couldn't enter the zone.
Yeah. I think I think one of the other issues that it creates is that when you have people that value the behemoth so much, it then can cause a lot of rifts and people to be displaced, right? Because you'll have stronger players that will, and we've seen this happen across multiple seasons, where you see some of the strongest players just leave their alliances and they'll just go join one alliance, so that way they can be strong enough to do the behemoth, right? Or do the elite raid. And then that can cause, if you want to say, rifts or just unforeseen circumstances, right? Like, you know, I've seen situations where that's happened and the players didn't go back to their alliance and they were asked to stay, or they were like recruited, right, while they were there. I would imagine that's pretty common. And then you have people that will go back to the alliances. But the challenge is that it like you said, it almost becomes more of a chore, because you have to do all this maneuvering just to get there. And it doesn't mean, it's not to say that there shouldn't need to be any maneuvering that's done. There are going to be instances and cases where maneuvering is required, whether it's for PvP purposes, actually on the battlefield and in war, if it's for doing raids, if it's for power balancing, right? There are other means on why you would do this. If you need to shift out over rally leaders to specific alliances, like there are points on why you would. But it just further continues down this funneling track of like creating more hurdles, more hoops to jump through, more steps. And you're right, like from what you were saying, on someone who ended up leaving because it was just too much. There's, I'm sure, a number of other people that have just stopped playing or have lowered activity because they or just said, hey, I'm just not even going to worry about, like, even though I love I love doing Behemoths. Like I love that PvE aspect. That's my most enjoyable thing. I'm just going to give up on it. And because of that, that can lead to decreased activity and eventually people leaving. And
Yeah,
so,
and
yeah,
like in our server, it caused animosity. People got mad at leadership because we just simply had to refuse members to enter the layer.
yeah,
Because if not, we were not getting Behemoth. We would ruin the whole season for 400 players. And it made a rift between leadership because we decided to single people out who were not performing up to the standards, and that's we had to do it because of the game mechanics,
yeah.
and it just becomes an unsurmountable mountain for people in leadership to satisfy everyone in the alliance or satisfy the majority of players
Yeah.
when they introduce these kind of mechanics.
I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's the same. It's the same concept with the villages, right? Like that's all you're doing with the villages too, as well, by putting a cap on it. Like, and I talk about this often. Like, who in their right mind asked for there to be a village cap? I'll tell you who. Nobody. Like,
Facts.
where was this overwhelming support? Where was this suggestion with 500 upvotes? Where was the VIP support feedback screenshots that we were seeing flooding everyone's chat saying, yeah, you know what a great idea would be? Let's remove this passive ability where there's no cap for villages and everyone just gets the passive buffs. So you know what? Let's just like screw people over or just make it more difficult for them. And we're just going to start putting member caps on villages now. Like, let's be real. No one asked for that. Or I should be more specific. No one as a majority asked for that. But that's just another thing. To your point on that further alienates, it further isolates players, it further frustrates people, and I'm sure it also leads to more management burnout. Like if you're an officer in a lead, who wants to deal with that? Short answer, no one. No one wants to sit there and now all of a sudden deal with another task of assigning who's going to be able to fill into villages or not. And it's just, yeah, man, it's like that's just another thing that's negatively impacting the overall gaming experience, not just from a regular member, but from a management perspective as well. And it feels very out of touch. I will say it feels like there's a big disconnect when you see a change like that happening. When it comes to the change happening, and like this is something that I'm going to be advocating for. Like when I get some time, I literally have a list of probably like 30 or 40 suggestions that I'm going to write up in like a nice formatted post, and I'm going to make individual videos on these things.
Question. Why do they only have the CPU in VIP only a week? You can regenerate because in Rock you can get it every time it hits 6 o'clock. Every time everything get refresh, your VIP store get refreshed also. You can buy more CPU. CP. Why does it like why has we have to wait a week for me to buy more CP out of VIP? Because you real think about it, if you want to keep people more active after they're done do, a little bit hunting or whatever it is, they want to keep on playing, but they can't keep on playing. We can't do more forts because what? We're out of freaking CP. Like I think that was one of the most dumbest thing they did was not have some type of way to regen it as quick as possible so people can do more stuff in the game. Because you really think about it, a lot of these free to play players they rely on those little things that they get from it, and it keeps them more active in the game. When I was playing Rise of the Kingdom back in the old
Well,
days
Rock
when we
has the
used
same
to,
thing, right? They have AP action points, so you had a limit as
yeah,
well.
yeah, but the thing is, you could get a lot from VIP.
Mm,
So once you hit a certain VIP, you can buy it. So
yeah.
you can literally sit there and just buy a lot of it, and then Friday everybody's around the map just running around hunting barbs, which
It could be exploited too, though, just by incentivizing whales to immediately go to that VIP level as quick as possible, gain an unfair advantage of having
Yeah.
level 60 heroes before every
no,
other PP player.
it wasn't a high VIP. So look, if you really think about it, everybody's rushing VIP 8, right? Because you get that extra research,
Yeah.
right? You don't have that in Rock. You don't have that extra research thing
No,
in Rise of Kingdom.
you don't.
So the fact that a lot of people be like, "Oh, I can do military and economy at the same time," that's crazy. So I'm gonna spend that money, or I rather invest the money in getting that so I can have that extra research. So now think about it. While I'm done with my game, doing all my research, get all my troops trained, all that, now I have nothing else to do in this game. Let me spend a couple of action points. Boom. I do 4 forts, 4 or 5 forts. Guess what? And I join some rally. Guess what? It's done already. What else is in this game for me to do? I've already done
PvP.
a couple. I've done a couple campaign. It's PvP, yes, but at the same time, it's like when you're at the early stage where you want to level up your heroes, you want to do something more active. You just want to stay in the game, just be a little bit more active, and you can't even do that. Why? Because you don't have no action points.
Uh,
I feel like
uh,
action points
for,
needs to be more. You have to like at least don't. I will understand they say 2 days. The next 2 days you can buy action point, but a whole entire week, a week? Come on, think about it. I gotta sit down for the next 15 hours for my action point to be regen to full, and then it's done within 5-10 minutes.
you can go into the minuses of your CP too, though. You can go into -1,000 to have about 2,500 CP you can use daily,
Yeah,
and it
but
regens every 24 to
yeah, but that means you gotta
make
wait
you
a little bit longer. Also, it's to me, it just it still don't make no sense. Why I gotta sit down? I got It's like going. It's like being a bank. I'm gonna put my account at negative for what reason? Just so I can
but it
spend a little bit
also
more.
it also might become a burden for the players if they have to spend too much time doing their CP all the time. Like I get
No,
it.
I don't think so.
It's good for the active players, but the casual player might not enjoy it that much.
Well, the cash players, that's their problem.
The
They
casual,
got the
casual, not
casual. Most of my casual players, I have my casual players complain about that because when I'm running forts for them, and I don't mind going to negative for them because at the end of the day, like I said, I would do that for them. But at the same time, they want to do. I want to get them involved. I want them to rally forts. Where's Caden? Hold on.
no. But I'm sorry, I didn't see your point really. But that could also just be because of interest reasons. I've already played 4 seasons trying to do CP and forts, so I'm a bit tired of it.
Yeah.
It feels like a chore now doing them. But for a starting player, I can get the feel. I get that you might have the feeling that CP is fun to do, and
Yeah.
it's an interactive part of the game, builds community, I guess. But from the sentiment I'm getting from the players I'm playing with right now, they're tired of it. Can't be asked looking for darklings. That's the max level. Can't be asked looking for pets. That's the correct level. Doing forts is just a chore in general.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now that you can't even solo fort, it becomes even more boring because you have to wait for people to join.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing really is that people want to be able to hit max level, within a reasonable amount of time. It's and the way I look at it is like you have to look at it like how WoW players, right? Like how an MMORPG looks at it. And when you look at WoW, I remember, uh, when friends of mine would try to get me to play World of Warcraft, it was always, um, it was always, uh, hey, look, you need to be at max level, right? You need to hit max level 70, whatever the max level would be, is or was. And then once you hit max level, you can start enjoying more of the game. Like you unlock more of the game, right? Once you hit max level, and that needs to be a similar approach for how it's looked at in Kingdom Builders. Like it can't take 2 years for a free to play to hit T5. Like that's unreasonable. To me, honestly, I feel like if you're grinding, if you're active, if you're doing all the events, being able to hit T5 in like 6 months, to me, is reasonable. Like that makes more sense. Because then you have to understand, and bear in mind, we're just talking about unlocking buildings 25 and just getting max tag, right? To be able to do that in 6 months, you still have a lot more of stuff to do. You still got to do artifacts. You'll still have to work on you still have to work on your VIP. You'll still have to work on your pets. There's other things that you're still going to have to work on, right? You're going to have to Work on your heroes. You still got to max skill them out and get all of those to 30. Like there are
So,
other
so,
tasks to do outside of just hitting max research and all your buildings at 25.
so
But my
question.
point is like it takes too long to grind. And also you have to think about the other thing as well, you still got to train troops, right? You're most likely as free play, you're never going to be able to train more troops than someone who spends. But that's not the point. The point is about being able to max your account out at a certain level or get to certain thresholds within a reasonable amount of time. So you can start not only enjoying the game more, but you can start participating and engaging in the game more, which also will allow for those that spend money to enjoy the game more. Why? Because they'll have more people out in the field that are willing to fight.
So,
So
so,
it's a
so
win-win.
nasty.
At the end of the day, it just like that's always something that's really that I've always found interesting. Is like you look at a
Like,
game like WoW that has a proven I don't want to say a proven model, but they have a good model if you understand why you have to grind to a certain level and then what gets unlocked when you get to that level. And the problem is that in Kingdom Builders it just takes way too long. Like it's exacerbated.
so you see how you said because you're already at a certain level, like hidden darklands is like nothing. It's boring for you, right? Because you're in the millions, right? With your power, correct? You got to think about players that's just starting the game. You want to find something that grasps them. Like with my alliance, these are players that's new to the game. This is the first time they ever played the game. I have 60 players that's always active.
Yeah.
The reason why I have 60 players that's always active, I give them stuff to do in the game. I reward them. I have to come out of my own pocket and say, hey, listen, if you hit 150 mil by tonight, you get a $10 iTunes gift card. You get me? And I have players that would trip in just to keep them active. When they reach a certain power, which is half a mil, they're like, okay, I'm stuck in research. I'm stuck in doing everything else. I can't level up my hero. How can I level my hero? Go hit Darklands.
Excuse me.
I'm out of CP. So what else is there to do? Just put your troops to farm and scout the map.
Yeah.
They get bored with that. You get me? I can't find any other way to grasp them for them to even stay on even a little bit longer and try to do anything else. So now if I can say, okay, guys, I'll take 10 of you guys and we go waste all your CP on just hitting level 10 Darklings or level 11 Darklings. They want to do that. Then I'll say, okay, recharge your CP again, and I get another 10. I can't do that because guess what? Me myself, I'm out of CP. The people that I was running with is out of CP. When I tell my other R4s to take another 10 to go do it, they're out of CP. Then we're done within 5 minutes. We
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
have something
So
to
I think the
recharge.
CP argument is the CP argument to me. I just feel like maybe it needs a little bit more data to be able to really say one way or another because I could argue both sides. I could argue the side of there shouldn't be any CP and just let people go and attack as long as they want and like let it be a pure grind thing where if you're able to grind it out, right? It's like that.
Even
Oh
that'd be
gosh,
better. That would be way better.
what's that thing where I'm forgetting what that term is, but there's like a term in the economy or whatever where it's like if you have land you can farm it, you can do whatever you want with it, and then you get all the money, right? Like your investment, that's your ROI.
Capitalism.
Okay, thank you. There you go. Yeah. Maybe if it's something like that to loosely use that, right? In Kingdom Builders, as a free to play, you can make a case for saying that as a free to play, you can get as much out of the game as you want based on the time that you put in. And if there was a game that came out that was like that, I would actually be okay with that because I would love to see that as a test case, right? On the other hand, I do think that there needs to be some kind. I don't know if I'd say need, but I do think there's an importance on having soft and hard caps on what can be on how much of something that can be acquired to an extent, right? At a certain time, like I think obviously with purchases, people just shouldn't be able to have unlimited purchases. Like I think that's smart that they have a hard cap on how many purchases you can do per day. I don't think anyone would disagree with that, especially the free to play, right? So, again, and for the most part, it is a balancing act, right? It's a give and take. Uh, but with things like CP, I mean, it's iffy because, I can make an argument for having the CP cap the way they are. If you look at how big accounts are piloted, right? For people that pilot accounts, and there's actually pilot selling services that they do in Rock. They do this in COD 2 as well, and I'm sure they did this in Infinity Kingdom, right? Where people will basically just come on and play your account for you. So, you can have that be the case where someone who's spending and they're able to use a lot of their CP throughout the day. I mean, who knows how much or less they might use compared to a free to play. But, it is something that kind of. Now, are you going to argue and say that the amount of accounts that are being piloted far exceeds the amount of free to play players? Of course not. That would be ridiculous. There's no way that that's the case. But it is a part of a case that can be made for why you would have some limitations. I think in addition to by having limitations, probably the most important one is that it paces out the progression, right? Very similar to how the Augerstone timeline operates. It doesn't just allow for people to get a level 60 hero on day one, right? Which you could still argue the semantics of, okay, is that right or not? But that probably is more of really why they do that. It's so you can't just get, 10 heroes to level 60 on day one of a new season. And that's probably the argument in their mind, is that it paces out the season's development and a player's progression that coincides with the reset mechanic that they have. Like that to me, I think is more of their argument on it. So like I said, I could see both sides of it. It's just a matter of, are they willing to test something and maybe loosen some restrictions or change up the way it's done or maybe add more in? And then on top of that, the other thing you would want to look at if you're going to try and put together an argument for that is you would have to literally have someone start their account up in the morning and put a timer on and then record them doing every action that they can do in the game and seeing how long are they playing on an average basis. And that would be assuming that you've already maxed out your Dragon Trail or you're as high as you can go, right? So you're just not strong enough to do another Dragon Trail level. And then you're doing your Darkling hits, you're doing your resource gathering, or you're doing other events, right? Assuming that you have your storyline maxed out, your main storyline maxed out, and like other things, right? That aren't like seasonal events, things that aren't on the events tab, right? Again, similar thing with like fog, right? You have all your fog cleared, you've already got all the villages and all the buildings, etc. rewards from fog. You've already done that. And you'd be looking at, okay, how many events are going on that day? How many can you participate in after, after you've done your Darklings to start, right? Darklings and or forts. And like, is there an event that you can use CP? Then you would start timing that out. And you would say, okay, well, I did this every day this week for 7 days, or I did this every day for a month, and these are the average times that I played. Now, if you can show me that data, that would be fascinating. That would be something of value to look at, because then you can say, okay, well, on every day I'm averaging 1 to 2 hours, right? And then there's nothing to do, and then I'm done, right? That's a lot more tangible than it being kind of a he said, she said, right? And that's not to take away from what you're saying or from what other people are saying, but sometimes having something concrete that you can look at visually to support the argument that you're trying to make allows for it to be more widely understood, right, by a larger populace. So, like I said, that's what I would say on that.
So just to jump into this, there is a lot more to the game than just Darklings and wasting your CP bar. You can PvP. Behemoths are in the game, and especially in the early season, there is not that high of a bar of entry into the Behemoth scene. As an R4, you can always open the Elite. If your alliance has captured the Behemoth, you can always open an Elite and put in people and try to do it for fun. You can always, most likely, early seasons, there are other alliances there. You can either set up friendly battles, or you can just have a straight up battle with them. The interactive things about, like, if Darklings were more like chests and things like that, or maybe it's more interesting, because Darklings and forts become so monogamous and just repetitive that if you're going to make people do it the most optimal, if you want to progress your account most optimally, and there is no hard cap on the CP you can use, you're going to be stuck leveling Darklings every day for as long as you can, and that is also a way to get burnout from your players. if you have to be the best, do Darklings constantly, every season, every reset, constantly do Darklings at day one. Take break
Yeah.
from work, for example, to just do Darklings so you can be at top. Like
Yeah. But
it
to
just
your
becomes
point, I think
terrible.
people would enjoy. I think if you removed the cap and the people that wanted to do it could, because right, it's all about the time that you have available. So if you can invest the time and you want to do that, then I don't think that's a problem if that person is going into it knowing full well of what they're doing and also knowing that the more time they invest now, the faster they're going to get to their goal. But I agree as far as like having, I think, diverse events, right? More diverse content, so it isn't, as you said, so monotonous.
Yeah, and also how you can do it instead. Yeah, sure. Remove the cap on CP, but remove the rewards after a certain point. So you don't force your players to have to go do that constantly. If you want to, you can do it, but just don't get extra rewards from it. Do it for the social aspect. But it would be too much of a burden to force all your players if they want to be competitive to do such a boring event every day. And that's from my personal perspective. I fucking hate Darklings and Forts.
Oh,
I
I
prefer
don't
more
mind.
PvP.
I don't mind.
Yeah, there are players who enjoy that aspect of the game. I enjoyed it for one season and then I burnt
I
out.
enjoyed it for once, yeah. But to your from what you're saying to add on as well, that's also because of the reset system, right? Where if you're just talking about purely from having to relevel heroes, that's really where that comes in. Obviously, aside from doing the forts, doing the other events, right, to get the arrows and the books to level your rally building and your tower or your beacon, right? Those are uh, those are the things that I mean. I think everyone would probably agree. Those are probably the most lengthy grinds at the moment. Is getting those two things because it hard stops you from getting your research to 25, which also hard stops you, or your research center to 25, which also hard stops you from getting T5. And
It doesn't hard stop you. I give gold chests to my members so they can get treaties. But it's pure honor.
yeah, but that's an extra
Yeah,
though, right? I mean, yeah.
yeah. It's just I'm just trying to be funny. Yeah,
Oh, okay, yeah. And I was going to say earlier, like you're right on. You can do other things like doing the behemoths or going out and doing fun raid parties. But really, where I was more coming from was what can an individual player do on the day to day, right? Things that you can just go and do. You don't have to wait for someone to open or wait for a gate to be unlocked. You can just do. And I think when you look at the number of events that are in the game right now, I mean, I would argue it's probably about an hour, maybe less than an hour of time on average per day, right? That a player can do. If you're looking again, that's assuming that you have your stories done. You're already at the highest Dragon Trail level you can get to, right? And you've completed some of these static events, right? That is just general progression based. Yeah, I'm talking just like the weekly events. How much of that how much time can you put in on that on a daily basis, aside from maybe any other kind of one-offs or pop-ups that come up, right? Because that's your baseline. That's your baseline amount of average time that you can put into the game. And something tells me it's got to be around an hour, right, or maybe less than that, after you log on, collect everything in your city, do your Darklings, and then based on what events are available. And obviously, it can exceed that, if you're doing an event where you need to go out and do a bunch of darklings and you'll get the chests from it, right, from going out, like that's something where you would probably invest more. And the name unfortunately is escaping me, but like something like that, to that effect. And that's where where I was coming from is what's that when you look at weekly events that you can do on a day-to-day basis, how much really is there? Because to me, it just feels like that number is smaller than we might think it is.
uh, oh yeah, it definitely is. I felt that in season one there was a hard cap for what I could do, but I also feel like it's wrong to make that uh, to not have like if you're forced to every day you have to do so much work uh, to be competitive. Like you have to put in at least what's if you have to put in like in WoW 4 or 5 hours into the game
Mm-hmm.
to do your dailies and things like that, that would also become a chore because people have lives too and things like that. But if you have a 1 hour cap of this, I have to get done, and I can do like yeah, as you said, you could add more soft events that give some decent reward, but it's not must-have rewards. For example,
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, like, to me, I just think that if they add in more events, and obviously more events are going to come with time, but I do think that's something that probably needs to be more of a focal point, right? Where, I mean, first off, you'd have to have someone pull that data, and that would be interesting. Like, I might actually do that one day, where, or maybe I'll do it like for a month or something, or I mean, obviously you'd have to do it for at least a period of time to see, so you could see some consistency and some trends, but that would be interesting to see that data on, depending on players that are at maybe different levels, different power levels, right? When you log in each day, how long are you in? How long are you playing until you've done everything you can do, right? And then it's just a matter of basically waiting, right, for your gatherers to come back, right? So you can send them out again, or for your CP to refill. Like that data would be interesting because then you have a little bit more of a point, right, that can be made from that. But I think if they add in more events, specifically like enough. I mean, like a good example. If I look at the event board right now, right, there are one, two. There's five. Sorry, not four. Three. There's three daily events that are going on, right? Why couldn't there be 6, 9, 12 daily events going on? There could be, and I think that is something that it would be nice for them to like work their way up towards, right? Because the only events I can participate in right now is Divine Depository. That was the name I was looking for, right? That's where you're just basically going out and killing Darklings and oh god, whatever. I don't know if it's forts too as well. I'm always forgetting on this one, but what is it? Oh yeah, sorry. This is from gathering resources, attacking Darkling patrols or beasts, and then collecting resources in your city, right? But the only action is that you're going to spend something on is attacking Darkling patrols or beasts, right? But you could do. I think it says so there's a limit on it. It's not unlimited. You can only do 80. So that's unfortunate. I didn't know that. So now there's a limit on it, on how many you can do. But well, yeah. I mean, I guess it's just somewhat iffy. I mean, you have a cap on CP, right? Obviously, if you're spending, you have more CP that's available to you, so you actually would be able to get more of these, right? Technically, than someone who's free to play. So you can make an argument that the cap actually does still help free to play. Well, I guess it's iffy because like you're on one argument, you're like assuming that a cap helps free to play because it limits how far along a spender can get. But then on the other argument, you're also limiting on how much daily overall progression the free to play can get to eventually get to T5. So, yeah, I actually think I'm more in favor of the no cap when I think about it like that. But then like the other one, right? I have a Darkness Rises event where it's me destroying forts. I can only destroy 15 forts and I can get something for that. Maybe doing 15 forts, okay, maybe that takes an hour, right? If you're averaging, 5 minutes, or maybe a little over an hour, right? If you're averaging, 5-minute turnarounds, or if everyone's ready to go, maybe they start them faster, right? But if you're averaging, a 5-10 minute turnaround, probably an hour and a half, 2 hours to do 15 forts if you're doing them back to back. And then research and development I have right now, which is, gain tech power, right? I mean, that's obviously something that's going to take, a while, unless I'm saving up and I'm only boosting when those events come around, right, to be able to maximize all the rewards. But still, something like research and development, even if I had all the speed ups and the resources available to boost the 103.5 thousand power, I could probably do that in 5 minutes or a few minutes, right, just from selecting, speeding up, finishing. So, all in all, just today alone, I'm probably looking at 3 hours worth of content, right? Depending on how much I grind out Darklings for the Divine Repository, that's probably an average. But like I said, my point is you'd want to do this kind of thing over a month to see how much time, because like you would basically want to cycle it enough to where it goes through all the events, right? You would want to play every day to where it cycles through every daily event, and then seeing what that average looks like per day, and then what is it per week, and then what's your playing time for the month. And and then obviously maybe you do it where it's like you write down the rewards that you get, how much rewards are you getting for the time that you're investing. My point is, like, you'd want to do a little bit of due diligence here, but I still think at the end of the day it comes down to, eventually having in more events, because again, what's stopping, why stop someone who wants to, be on for 8 hours? There's no way there's 8 hours worth of daily content that they can do, but why shouldn't there? Why couldn't there be better yet?
I mean, technically, this is also a PvP game, so you can always find more content by, for example, hitting people in farms, being in a war.
Yeah.
It is also a mostly PvP game.
But I think you would agree that the efficiency and the effectiveness of your PvP is based on the progression and development of your count, which is more so tied to PvE, right? To campaign, to progressing. That's where your account development is going to come down to, and then that will determine, for the most part, on how effective and efficient you can be in PvP based on your level.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I agree. But there is also that factor to keep in mind that you could also fill out your daily activities. With, for example, I have a guy in my alliance who spends 12 hours a day running around hitting farms.
Well, you're doing your merits, right? So, like, if you want to merit trade or go out and fight so you can buy everything in your merit store. No, I agree there.
Some crazy ass motherfucker has 3 cavalry marches, 2 infantry marches that are all the same speed, runs around and hits farms. That's good. Yeah, no, I definitely, they need to add more games, but they should, or events, I mean. But, for example, like having more, the Behemoth events, just always have them open.
Mm-hmm.
Let people do the Behemoth event, because there are very, like, you can replay them, but you just don't get the rewards. That's an event. If you always have it up, you can always do it.
Yeah.
I don't get why they're limiting it to certain times.
Yeah. No, I got you. I mean, yeah. I think that makes sense. As far as, if you're, I think, like, once it's been, if you're saying once it's been unlocked from Augusta.
Well, no, like, the events that sometimes come where, for example, 10 people go into the Hydra raid and do the raid. Like the Behemoth events it's an event time.
Oh, are those the ones that give you the seasonal buffs?
No, this is an event that comes in, for example, it came in this season, in Season 2 Plus, where, for example, a nerfed Necro Giant comes in. You have 10 players from random servers.
Oh, no, yeah. No, I know what you're talking about. Yeah. It's like that. It's like the individual group matchmaking one where you can have players from, like, different alliances or that are in that map or that kingdom that all go and fight.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're talking about.
For example, like, just always having an option to go around and matchmaking those behemoths could be a way to take time off, or maybe you can add, like, a leaderboard to it and see, like, ooh, okay, you gain that much rewards if you've completed the this with those requirements and things like that.
Yeah.
Just add some more interactivity to that event.
Let me add on to that. So something I think would be great to expand on that is if you added in, like, a 5v5 or like a 10v10 deathmatch, and it would pair you based on similar power, right? Similar average power and total power, and you could go in there with, like, a team, and you could face anyone in the kingdom, right? It would basically like, that would be dope too as well.
Yeah.
And you can practice on your small scale fighting. Then maybe you have a bigger one that's like 20 versus 20 players or something, right? And you can practice, like, mid scale fighting, and then maybe you can practice large scale fighting, right? If you wanted to have 40 or 50 players, right, in there. Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. I think something like that would be, like, allowing for that to happen more often. And you could even do objectives that mimic certain events that are in the game, like with Runic Statue, which is basically like a domination, Call of Duty domination, or like a Halo King of the Hill, right? You could do something like that as its own event, where you maybe have 3 stations, and then you go in with a fixed number of people, and you have it be like an MMR rating, similar to how it does for, or how it tries to do for Roots of War, right? But you have something like that for that game. But no, I'm 100% agree, 100% on board there. I think
Capture the lifestyle.
yeah, capture the flag.
Like,
There you go.
yeah, exactly. There's so much they could do.
Yeah.
They've shown the potential to be able to do it. They have the technology.
Mm-hmm.
They have like the inter matchmaking systems. They just haven't done it. It's either just laziness, complacency, or they just don't have the time to do it with. They don't have the people
Yeah.
to do it with. Like for example, the map revamp and things like that. They just don't invest enough in the game to do it.
Yeah. No, but you're right. 100%. Tenfold. Oh man, I love it. I love it.
But yeah, no, they need to remove the runic statues. So bad, but I think you muted yourself.
Oh, did I? No, I'm still here. Can you
Yeah.
hear me?
Oh, okay. Nah, okay, that's right now.
Oh.
The runic statues, the times for them are so bad. Like,
Yeah.
if you're unlucky, you can't even do the runic statues. You have wait 3 days, and it turns out it's in the middle of the night for you. Like, and you're just going to have to wake up to be AFK on it for hours because, for example, the other alliance just has stopped showing up for it. There's no PvP there anyways, and things like that. I think it needs to be refought. I don't think they've quite fully fought through the event.
Yeah. Yeah, I think with something like Runic, the thing for me with Runic is I just wish that the Runic area was a little bit bigger, and that they also had more than just one area to capture. Like, I wish they had it on each lane, right? Instead of just in the middle, right? Like, you could say that the middle one maybe gives you like 2 points a second, and then the ones on the side give you 1 point a second, right? Like something like that, that just allows for more strategy to be implemented, right? So it's not just a funneling thing, you know, where it's like everyone's just going to 1 point. And the runic idea isn't a bad idea. It's essentially just a king of the hill or a domination, but you have to do more with it. The area is just too small, and there's only 1 point there. You know, I think part of this is the interesting thing about Kingdom Builders, right? Is like you look at how they built Runic, and they said, okay, we're going to have this central point, and then they're going to fight PvE units on the outside. At face value, okay, on paper, maybe not a bad idea. But when you're thinking about PvP, sometimes it can be good to look and take inspirations from other games. And to me, that I think is like one of the areas I would like to see them invest a little bit more in, is take some creativity, take some inspiration from other games, and think about what their game mode is, and how can we implement something like that into Call of Dragons that fits the mold, right? And again, I think there's multiple things, like you were saying, and we were mentioning before, that they can do. And hopefully, I hope they do. I really do, because, I mean, there's a lot of potential.
Yeah, and like most games that are good are not good because they're unique. They're good because they do things in a way that's already proven, but it's done better. And you might have a unique concept, but you can still bring in concepts from other games and just do them better. That's how WoW succeeded. It did everything other games had already done, but just better.
Yeah.
It just improved everything. Instead of having whenever you died, you level down, your equipment gets ruined, like in the hardcore Korean MMOs back in the time. Like it made the MMOs more forgiving,
Yeah.
which helped the casual player base. Like this game is doing right now, it's much more forgiving than Rock, and it can take more aspects of Rock and just make them better.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
And Infinity Kingdom and other games like that.
No, no, I'm with you. And you know, like that's one of the things why you know, like if you hear me talk about the whole migration thing and how migration going into kingdoms, like you know, you should have a home kingdom base, like a home kingdom area, which we don't right now, but obviously they're adding, and you should have something like an accept deny system, right, where you can vet every single person that wants to apply and come into your kingdom, so it's not just a free for all, like it has been for many kingdom builders now, and we've seen negative effects of that across multiple kingdom builders and multiple kingdoms. And it's looking at things like that and then just saying, how do we improve upon it? How do we make it better for the everyday player and for those alliances and the kingdoms themselves? And it's funny because when I talk to people about this, you know, you will always have some people who will advocate and say that, oh yeah, we don't need to add home kingdoms in the game. We don't need to turn this into rock. And I get that because again, you can say you could name any game right that has a home kingdom in it and say, oh yeah, we don't need to turn it into this game. But really, I think that the parts I try to explain it from is what are the actual inherent benefits, like stripping away just oh yeah, you know, because to some people all they hear is okay, you're just copy pasting that feature over here. But it's really understanding why is that feature beneficial, why is it successful, and then what are the pros and cons. And when you really get down to it, there's just a lot more benefits than there are negatives from adding those things in. And again, that's just, you know, a few examples. But,
Yeah. For example, while we're on this migration system, it just makes our job harder. Like our leadership team right now is scrambling to get data to try to get people in, like to save up their gems if they want to migrate. Try to convince people that okay, you're not going to be good enough in a competitive kingdom, and we have to find ways to tell them, okay, I would recommend you to find another
yeah,
home.
yeah, yeah. Like basically
Uh,
saying, please don't
yeah,
migrate.
yeah, like it's and it
Yeah,
just ruins the game. It just makes it so you have to fight with people to just get simple things. Like last season, we migrated two servers together, and in that we were hoping to get our most active players.
mm,
But what we realized is that we lost some of our active players because they couldn't migrate in time, and uh, of course the server got leaked in the middle of it, and that is just something that it happens whenever you're migrating 200, 300 players. But we just ended up with so many people, unbonded people, and we found ourselves the same problem we had last season. There's just too many people that we don't need there, and we can't really do anything about it
yeah,
because we can't accept it. And we have no control at all.
yeah. And essentially, like you want to trim the fat. Is a
Yeah,
very simple way to say it. Like you want to make sure that you're able to get in as much quality or as many players that fit the mold of what you're trying to build and what you're hoping for, right? Versus people coming in that are somewhat unvetted, right?
yeah,
So no, I'm with you 100%. And to me that's one of the biggest things. And again, I think your point is a great exhibit A on why is it that when people are trying to go through migration, they end up having to jump through all these holes, or you have so much extra work that is needing to be done, or because there's not enough information out about it, there's no control for it. It's very chaotic because the door is completely open right now, and there's just no way to do anything. And that also leads to poor player experience. I mean, you look at how many alliances over the past couple migration seasons have not been able to either move all of their players over, right, in situations where they wanted to and were able to, or move a significant amount of players over from their alliances, or just even if you're merging 2, 3, or 4 alliances or players from those alliances, maybe not all of them, but you just can't get everyone in. You know, and again, like looking at the player's happiness and the joy or the enjoyment that that they get out of trying to do these things, but then falling short and not being able to. I mean, it's just the truth. Like that causes some people to quit and just stop playing. And you know, I it's funny because I think about the game design of this, and it does baffle me because I wonder why hasn't this ever been considered? Like why for years that Rise of Kingdoms has been out, why have they never just fully implemented a autonomous accept an I system. And it's just, and don't get me wrong, they partially have for some people, but not for everyone, not for the majority. And to me, that's what is so interesting, that this hasn't been allowed, but also because of so many benefits, so much good that can come from this. Yes, will it add more workload on the kingdom management team? It will. Can you alleviate some of that workload by providing things like application stats and resumes for players? Yes. Can you allow for more people to vet those players in a kingdom so it doesn't just come down to one person, right? The king or queen. Yes. You can do these things, but it really requires that kind of outside the box thinking, because these things, to my knowledge, haven't really been done before in more of your mainstream kingdom builders. And for me, like, when I look at the game, because I very much I love being a fly on the wall, right? I love reading, I love looking, I love educating myself, I love researching, I like pulling data, I like looking at trends. These are things I really enjoy. And because of that, I think it provides me a little bit more of kind of a unique perspective, or a different perspective on how I look at the game compared to maybe how the average player might look at the game. And these are just things I think are really important. Like, I think the management side of the game and the realistic expectations of what happens in the game on a day-to-day basis is almost very different than what an average player may think when they just come in and play. Like, the average player isn't going to come in and download the game and think to themselves, wow, I had no idea. Or think to themselves, man, I need to go and start helping out with diplomacy. I need to go start helping out with, auditing player activity. Like, those are just not things that the average player is really going to know, right? Unless they hear it from someone, or they get into management as an officer or lead. And it's kind of like that out of sight, out of mind, right? It's like you don't really know kind of how the alliance is being held together, how the kingdom is being held together, unless you're subjected to it, right, in some way.
Yeah, like, for example, I've been in leadership for 4 seasons in multiple alliances, and my days comprise of a 40-day work week, no, 40-hour work week, and then I have to spend another 40 hours managing the fucking alliance and doing spreadsheets and things like that. It just becomes unbearable on people. And for example, if they just added small little things to make it easier to manage, like a fucking search function in the Alliance tab, so I don't have to scroll for 2 hours
To
trying to
find
find
someone's
members.
name,
Yeah,
yes.
just trying to sitting and remembering people's power and uh, avatars just to try to find them, or let us copy paste the ID number of players so we can put them into spreadsheets properly, like they have for the name tags. If they just did that, we could sort them by player IDs instead of the player names, so whenever they change their names, it wouldn't hurt our data spreadsheets and things like that. Just small little things they can do.
I love that.
And I've been trying to advocate for this for 4 seasons, and they still haven't done anything about it.
I'm going to add that on my sheet. Let me see here. I'm going to add that on
Yes,
my suggestion
please.
sheet. Because Alliance. Hang on, let me do this. Yeah, because like I have a whole like suggestion sheet of like stuff that I'm going to go through. I'm going to add in. Like I was saying earlier, I'm going to make videos on this to explain the change and like why I think it would be beneficial, and then I'm gonna link the suggestion in the video, right? So people can spread some more awareness about it. But let me sorry, you said add a way to filter / search for players in the alliance by name, player ID, for R4s and R5s and R5. Okay. No, I like that.
Also, for example, add a way to copy paste player IDs instead of having to type them manually,
Okay.
like they have the nameplates.
Yeah.
Because that too would also be amazing.
Yeah, I'm gonna kind of add that to the same, because that kind of makes sense. Copy player IDs from Alliance. I'll just say from players. Yeah, from
Could you also add down a suggestion about letting Alliance leadership kick people out of the Behemoth layer, so we don't have to kick them out of the alliance when they've been AFK
No,
and
no, they
holding
talked
up
about
all.
that. They
Oh, they talked about it.
yeah, they talked about that in the last when I did the feedback. They did that in the last dev
Oh,
feedback
Q&A.
I did a video on that, the one that came out a week ago.
Oh, I've been a bit behind on the news, but thank God they're finally addressing that
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
this season we've had a lot of problems with that because of the player cap.
Yeah.
That was fucked. So you had to, if you kicked someone, you ruined their season.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah,
Yeah, yeah, no, but I do remember they did touch on that when I did the video on it.
I think it took 4 seasons to think about that. It's quite amazing.
Yeah.
No, yeah, but like we're burning through data members, like people who do spreadsheets, so quickly. Like the burnout is insane. That's how we lose most of our leadership is doing spreadsheets, keeping track of data and things like that. Just because it's so time consuming. For example, if you're trying to be a competitive alliance, keeping up with activity and so that. So if they just added easy copy paste functions, it would just make the life of a data team much easier. Instead of using 3 or 4 hours doing data, you can do it for half an hour. It would
Yeah.
at least lessen the burden on people. Because I think we've had about 20 to 25 people doing data this season, and we're down to 4. So,
But to your point, you know that's what happens. The burnout, and what's funny is that, and that could be like a whole separate discussion piece. But for a lot of kingdoms I've played in, usually what happens is that you'll have, like, if you're just talking within an alliance, right? You'll have, let's say, 8 people when you start out in an alliance that help with like extracurricular activities or tasks. And then as time goes on, that number gets smaller and smaller and smaller. But the challenge is that in quite a lot of cases, there's not active recruiting to fill those spots. So when someone comes out, someone slides in, right? Oftentimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes it will, right? If they're proactively going out and trying to find people to fill in those gaps. But usually, from what I see, is that people are going out and not enough replenishment is coming in until the burnout just kind of hits, an exploding point, right?
yeah. Well, yeah, and of what we've done to try to mitigate the burnout is trying to recruit a large management team and then dividing into groups. And those management teams will help each other in those groups. For example, we have 8 war leads,
Yeah.
and they're to supplement the time zones.
Uh-huh.
And then, whenever people have been tired of staying on for too long, you can have another war lead, and they communicate together and things like that. Then we have our, for example, R4, R5 duties. We
Yeah.
have that split into 2 since we're 2 alliances, but we also have advisors to those R5s,
Yeah.
so it lessens the burden on them.
Yeah.
And then we use, for example, territory management. That's also a place where we get a lot of burnout from people. Uh, so we try to supplement that by getting as many territory people in as possible, letting them communicate, and then not making them feel like they have to stay on 24/7, so that the territory doesn't get fucked up.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. It's almost a similar concept to why you see alliances running more than 8 officers, right? Or more than 6, whatever the max is right now. And you'll have like 2 teams, right? You have like a team that like rotates every 12 hours, right? Or you'll have officers on standby, right? Like if you need to fill people in to bring on board, or you just have people that help out that aren't officers, right? Like there's no rule that says you can't have someone do power auditing, right? Or activity auditing. That's not an officer, right? There's nothing that says you can't have a non-officer help out with internal affairs or player relations. Like that's the thing. Sometimes it's about thinking outside the box and not just limiting it and saying, "Oh, well, I can only have this many officers, so those are the only people I can really have help." No, you can have a lot of people help.
Yeah, we have 35 officers in our 2 alliances combined.
So see,
But that's just, but everyone has their small role, so it doesn't end up being too many chefs in the kitchen. Like the timing doesn't take too long, just because we have a lot of management, but not the only decisions that are made are the R5s, and then you have the input that is given from the R4s.
yeah,
So everyone gets their time to put in input, but if the decision is taking too long, there will always be a decision that will be made by the R5 and their advisors. And then, for example, we have a large data team, but they're not involved in leadership, as you said.
Yeah.
They're more on the back burner, doing things, helping whatever things are needed,
Oh yeah, man.
and stuff like that.
I remember that, man. I ran one of the departments I joined when I was in 1196 was their data team, their data department. They only had a few people that were there. And I can't tell you, like, it's funny when you go in, and this is like maybe, I don't want to, like, tear your ear off here. But what I noticed when I went in and I started playing, like, 1196 was like my first real serious kingdom and a kingdom builder, or I should say for Rock specifically. And when I went in there, my first year and a half, or sorry, first year, was really just learning. It was just learning how the kingdom operated, asking questions, engaging, participating, helping people out here and there, and just actively playing. And then after that, I started doing some small things here and there. It got noticed by some officers, eventually got noticed by some leads, and they were like, hey, are you interested in wanting to help out here or help out there or come and do stuff? And then eventually I got into the recruiting department. Was just starting off and helping out, eventually worked my way up through consistency, and I started running that department. And then I recruited people, right? And we ended up having a team of about 7 or 8 that would recruit, and we'd all coordinate between each other. And I set up that whole system, or revamped that system. And then eventually I went in and started help with data, right? And people running the data department. And I said, okay, well, let me help out. Like, what are you guys working on? How can I contribute? And, so then I started helping them out. And then afterwards, I started leading the data department, right? Because I just enjoyed doing that stuff. And then, I would help out a little bit here with like events or like internal affairs here and there, but just kind of more like a support if they just needed someone. And, you start kind of figuring out what you like. But sometimes just trying different things out, is one of the ways that you can figure out, hey, this is something I'm good at, or maybe I'm not. Very similar to like, you choosing an elective in college, like, just trying things out, right? It's trial and error. But for me, when I got into doing the departments, it was very much working my way up to get to that point. And one of the things I noticed is that when I got into the recruiting department and eventually the data department, it was very low activity. There was not a lot going on in them by the time I got in. And when I got there, it revitalized. It re-engaged the people that were there. You almost saw like renewed energy, renewed motivation, and sometimes getting that new blood in there can help in those situations. So, kind of similar or somewhat offish to what you were saying, but like that's for me when it came to working in departments. If you don't have a lot of people that are there, right, compared to what you were saying, sometimes just bringing in some new blood can be all the difference.
Yeah, no, yeah, and that's what we tell our recruiter is, if you find someone that, or please find someone that is interested in leadership. If they're not interested in leadership, trick them and make them join leadership. We trick people into leadership. We give them
Yeah.
the scholar role, and then they keep leadership for a little while, tell them to do some markers, and then add them to leadership Discord and force them into it. So that's also an approach.
Yeah.
Trick your most active players.
Oh man, too funny. Well, man, listen, Sifter, man, this has been such a pleasure chatting with you, man. This has been pretty cool. Very much enjoyed this conversation. What alliance are you in? I don't know if I asked that.
Oh, I'm in the IL.
Okay.
The IL families. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. And what's your position there?
I'm member management in Ann Arbor.
Okay. Awesome. No, this has been an absolute pleasure. Man, yeah. Honestly, I've actually been recording this since we started a while back ago. I'm probably going to upload this. This has been like a truly enjoyable discussion. Man,
Sounds good.
so much good stuff. Oh God, this is the stuff that gets me going. Man, it's just like talking about these types of having these kinds of discussions are just. I personally just think like they're so important for people to know about and to hear. Like there's just so much good that players can get out of them. So.
Yeah, no, I've really enjoyed it myself. It was nice talking to you.
Yeah.
It's been a good active conversation, and I really like that. Yeah, it was fun.
Oh yeah. And it's easy when when you're talking with someone who's kind of on the same wavelength or has just experienced similar things. easy, to your point, to kind of keep the conversation engaged. It's almost like, there's, you can't run out of things to talk about. So,
Yeah, and also whenever a player is passionate about the game, it's also more to talk about.
yeah.
There's always some aspect of the game that's irking to someone, and people might have other inputs, which is always good to hear. Like being in a information bubble that like everyone agrees with you is not healthy. You should always try to challenge your viewpoints and see if you can bounce ideas off of each other and learn more about the game. So having healthy discussions is always good to have.
Agreed. All right, well, I need to go get some food. I am so hungry because all this brain
Yeah.
power and talking has worked up an appetite for me. So, man, I'm gonna let you go. I don't know if I have you added. I'm gonna send you a friend request. But yeah, man, this has been a delight for me. So, man, awesome stuff. I'm sure I'll see you around. I'm gonna dip because I'm so
Yeah.
hungry. But I hope you have a good rest of your day. And Bob, I know you just joined, but have a good day as well.
See you.
Okay,
Have a
guys.
good night. Have a good day dinner. See you.